Thank you very much. Now let me welcome to the stage, I've got a great panel here. Susan Dudley, she's founder and senior scholar at George Washington Regulatory Studies Center at GW University, and she's a distinguished professor of practice at the Trachtenberg School of Public Policy. I just have to tell you, she is really into regulatory talk, and I want to get into that because it reminds me of my UCLA class on the subject. And we have Matt Soule, who's co-founder and CEO of Parallel, which we're going to hear a lot about. He's visiting from Los Angeles, so it's like 5 in the morning for you. So thanks, Matt, for being here. And of course, Rob Atkinson, the founder and president of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. And in my view, Rob is one of the, kind of most significant high-level voices about technology in all of its forms in a lot of areas. But he's been one of the great leaders in digital, but has been someone out there. And I just want to start out, Rob. Thanks for
I'm certainly the tallest.
What's that?
I'm certainly the tallest.
Exactly, the tallest. Yeah, I'm a little jealous. I'm just an inch down from you. But I just want to start out, sort of look at this question, right? Why? I was going to ask this to Ian Jeffries, but I mean, part of the question is, water is supposed to run downhill. And sometimes it's so hard to get it to do that in this town that when you're looking at the advent of new and promising technologies that have delivered, I can't think of major technologies that haven't, moved us in better ways, from the iPhone to digital opportunity to things that have made us smarter and better. And that leads to, concerns, but it also leads to progress and opportunity. And I'm interested in why, in the history of this, you think we've kind of have a techno-skepticism built in so deeply in this town.
Yeah, so I've written pretty extensively about that. Really, the U.S. took a turn for the worse in the late 60s and 70s. And that's really for our whole history, really all the way from the founding of the Republic up until then. The U.S. became the world leader. I don't want to say the only reason, but a principal reason is we were willing to take risks and we always saw technology as something that was good. I mean, you were mocked. If you were sort of even skeptical of technology through the 50s and 60s, up until then, if you were even skeptical of it, you were mocked by the elite class. You were a tinfoil hat wacko. You didn't get behind progress. It's the exact opposite now. So if you want to get a really good TED Talk, you don't go, hey, this technology is pretty good and it's making our lives better. Like, who cares? But if you say, this technology is destroying our human soul. I was at one of the Kennedys had a big salon, a big thing up in Hyannisport, and they asked me to. And there was a woman up there.
Which Kennedy kind of matters?
A woman. That's all I know.
Okay.
There's so many of them. And there's a woman up there on the panel who said, well, Google Maps causes Alzheimer's. I get back to D.C., I emailed the Alzheimer's Association. You guys ever heard of that? Like, no, of course not. So I think that's the problem. The other two challenges are what you've seen is this sort of emerging, again, elite consensus in Washington that these technologies are fundamentally too disruptive. And it's kind of this weird thing. It's like, geez, if it wasn't for disruptive technology, we wouldn't have had Trump. And goddamn, we got Trump. It was all this disruptive technology. It had nothing to do with why people voted in majority for President Trump. It had nothing to do with that.
So just to jump in here, one more notch in this, when I got to know you well when I was in New America Foundation, 1999, the internet, the IT revolution was upon us. Broadband was becoming a big deal. I'm good friends with Steve Case. We finally got rid of all those kind of sign up, dial-in discs of AOL, and we were going to have online all the time connectivity. And I remember the New America Foundation got $1 million from the Markle Foundation to try to describe for the railroad industry, for lawyers, for chefs, for how their worlds were going to change from broadband. And we were to be the focus groups and conceptualizers of this. And honestly, I don't think we impacted at all because it came like a tsunami and everyone changed their patterns. And I feel like we're in that moment again where we don't realize how significantly the tech tsunami is, and it's going to be there and move. But do you feel like there are a lot of similarities today in 2025, 26 with 1999?
Yeah, I think one of them is we're probably going to have a few AI companies that lose. I think there's overinvestment, which is fine. We had overinvestment. Irrational exuberance is ultimately good. It just means that some people will lose. But I think one of the things Ian pointed
there was irrational exuberance in the 1880s in railways.
In rail.
And that helped a lot, right? So
we overinvested in rail. But we then, as Ian said, we have the best freight rail system in the world because we overinvested. So I think Ian made this point, I think a lot of people don't fully understand it because most people sort of experience with this technology is their phone. It's not just sort of the fact that Moore's law has improved and we got 5G. It's this entire array of technologies that allow us in the cyber physical world that people don't see these technologies. If you see them in your car now, that's where you see them. But the reason rail can do this isn't just because they have satellite connectivity to connect. It isn't because just of AI. It's because they have cyber physical systems.
Right.
They have these sensors. The sensors with vision, the sensors with weight, sensors with temperature. And that whole world is way better than it was even 5 years ago.
Right.
And Washington sort of still hasn't caught up with that. And Susan can address this, but regulators tend to not want to make type 2 errors.
I never can remember which is
I
one
can
and two,
never
but-
remember.
but we know what you mean.
Yeah, it's the error where
Yeah.
something bad happens as opposed to the error where you don't let something good happen.
right.
Regulators are way too risk averse in that regard now because we're in a technology transformation. So it's better to just be sort of not go too fast because you don't
Right.
get fired. But you don't get fired for not going fast.
Right.
And you look at other countries, China being the case in point. I mean, man, the pedal is to the metal, to use a car analogy there, and we have to speed up, and not in a sort of reckless, stupid way, but there's lots of things we could do that would make
Because
it
get
easier.
back to my comments to Ian about being in Tokyo, Seoul, and Shanghai. I know you have been, right? You've been in those systems, both cargo and otherwise. Susan,
Steve, do you mind if I just jump in on that one before you ask
Yeah,
me
go
another
ahead.
one? I think the other lesson we can learn from the 90s is that the Clinton administration's explicit policy on the internet was first do no harm. So it was the opposite of what you're seeing, what you're concerned about now. So instead of saying, what are the dangers that might happen and can we prevent it? It was first, this new technology offers wonderful opportunities.
this is a baby, don't harm it.
Yes, yes.
Which is
And I think
really
we
good,
saw-
but it gets me to the question I was going to ask you, which is how do you design a regulatory structure that protects public interest, but that doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you will. And I know, I want to remind people that you were the administrator of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. You probably dream about regulations, right?
I
Is
do.
that your kind? I figured
Sometimes
you did.
they're
I met
nightmares.
you for 2 minutes, and I just said, "This is my person." You dream about regulatory structures. So I'm interested in what our experience is with the kinds of regulation, how you shape regulation, so it is so that it kind of solves some of these problems. It just seems so ridiculous that we're not bringing technology in faster to achieve better results. But how do you square that equation?
Well, my heart was beating very fast when Ian talked about we need to focus on outcomes. So don't set rigid rules of how you do things, like manual track inspection or 2 conductors per train. But let's see what's the safety outcome, what's the goal, and design regulations that way. And the iterative notion of what you were talking about, that we need to learn as we go along. So that could include pilots and sandboxes. But my understanding is now you need a waiver to use those automated track inspections. And that just shouldn't be the way we regulate.
Is there any industry that has that sort of encasing regulation along the lines you've talked about, which is essentially outcome driven as opposed to process driven?
Well, again, I'm going to show my age, but if you go back to how biotech was also first regulated, so this was before the Clinton internet experience, and the focus there was let's look at the risks that the product of this new technology might generate, rather than regulating based on the technology itself, and that really allowed the U.S. to our biotech innovations were far greater than other countries that were more precautionary and focused more on, gosh, this is a new technology, let's try to constrain it.
If you were to talk to Bruce Westerman, who's going to be here shortly, and Senator Fisher, who's in Nebraska, big rail state, and she's into this topic. What do you think they both need to promulgate when in the kind of, I mean, she's doing authorizations as I understand it. You know, Bruce is really engaged in the permitting reform questions, which are almost in every industry I talk to is around permitting reform. You know, I'd like to know what you would suggest to them their North Star needs to be.
I'll just start quickly with permitting reform because I know less about it. But I would say that's something that, as you say, is important across sectors. And if we pull out individual sectors and try to reform it, there's always going to be some group that's concerned. Whereas if we say across the sector, we just need to be able to build things faster. And so let's see if we can have more people who can say yes and fewer people along the way who say no. Broadly on regulating in the rail sector, the rail regulations go back to the 1800s. So it's
Right.
probably one of the oldest set of regulations, statutes on the books. And it probably is time for revisions to that. And I think the recent Supreme Court decisions have not only constrained how agencies interpret their statutory language
So this is Chevron,
and Loper.
Loper, yeah. And what has that done to the mix?
So quickly, what Chevron did,
No, we know what they've done,
okay.
but have they made it
I think
easier, less easy to get
I
good
think-
regulation in this space?
I think it's made it harder for agencies to interpret long-standing statutes to mean something different than they originally
I see.
meant. And so I think it puts the onus on Congress and provides Congress an opportunity to draft new legislation that is less prescriptive, more outcome-focused, as Ian said.
Great. Meet Matt Soule. Just meet Matt. I mean, Matt is a kind of person we rarely meet in Washington. You make things, like you really make things. We're in the kind of ideas and, we push paper and, digital emails and all this, but you're actually making things. Tell us about what you make, Matt. And I got to admit, you're in Los Angeles. You're about as far from Washington as you can get where you're based, and just sort of interested in that part of it too.
Yeah, so appreciate the opportunity. So let me talk to everyone a little bit about Parallel. So what Parallel is broadly doing is developing technology that is designed to increase rail's market share. And we're doing this because of all the public benefits that come with embracing a mode of transportation that is more energy efficient, it's cleaner. There's the public safety benefits of moving things by rail. Like every measurement we've seen is that rail is 10 times safer than on-road cars and trucks. So as a policy, we should be trying to drive as much freight to rail as possible, but also let's not forget the other benefit of reducing the cost of shipment for shippers and
But give the audience a picture, if you can, a
Yeah,
graphic
so-
of the vehicle you create.
So what we're solving for this market share problem, and so what we need is better service quality, we need more consistency, more flexibility, and of course reducing the cost of getting things off the network. And so the answer is not a train, at least in our view. We are developing a vehicle that is self-contained. It has its powertrain on board, all the sensors, computers, radios, and it has much faster asset turn. We move together in platoons. We still respect the way railroads operate. We work alongside traditional freight trains, but we want to increase market share. Trucking is a 10
You're
times
like the
bigger market.
Waymo of cargo
Exactly.
movement,
It's not a perfect analogy, but it's like it's a very good starting point to think about what we're doing. Is it's autonomous. By the way, it's battery electric, but our view is just get more things to rail to realize all those benefits.
And you I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this, but I was asking you where you manufacture and produce, but you were in Los Angeles now. You're
Yes.
thinking of maybe shifting. You're going to upgrade, kind of what you're doing. You don't have to tell us where, but what are the factors that go in? Because we're talking about the regulatory landscape right now, and I just have to admit, I'm just sort of thrilled to meet someone that's making something in this country that's tech enabled. You're putting it on rails, and it's made in America, which is kind of cool, unless you're really doing it in Canada and sneaking it down. I don't know. Maybe Mexico, but but that's okay. I like North America, but I think the broad thing that I think is really interesting is you're doing this in this regulatory landscape right now. Are you
We're
thriving?
trying the best we can.
Are you thriving, or could you be thriving more?
We could be thriving more, absolutely.
And what would help you thrive more as a manufacturer of
I
these
think
new?
it's everything. What Ian's talking, what Susan's talking about. It's a performance-based approach to safety and focusing on the safety outcomes, the safety approach, the process to how we achieve these results, but not prescribing technology inputs. And that's been the biggest issue that we've been working to overcome.
We just talked to Ian about this cargo theft issue. How do you deal with that?
We're not there yet, but we have a lot of strategies around that, and really they will not be proven until we're out in the general rail system. We're doing it, but like one of our starting points is keep moving. Like when this theft happens, it's when people will intentionally sabotage things, or just the inherent nature of these rail operations requires the equipment to stop, and that's a great opportunity for someone to jump on board. The telemetry, the instrumentation, the sensors we have also gives a lot of insight, but the flexibility of the platform also allows us to be responsive to things that might be happening out there that we're observing with these sensors. And we kind of did this by accident, but to further improve upon rail's energy efficiency, we've reduced the gap between our vehicles. And someone from the rail industry was out looking at our vehicles, and they're like, hey, by the way, it's harder to open the doors now. So we've kind of like pushed the threshold up for someone to actually break in. Now they're going to get like a acetylene torch and like cut a hole inside the box rather than just cut the lock.
I really like doing these programs with Ted Greener, he was at AAR, and Ian Jeffries, because it kind of gets me back into the rail world. My great uncle was a conductor on the Santa Fe Railroad. I've got his conductor stuff hanging in my home, and it's his the thing was on his hat. I mean, tickets, and it just really brings me back. But there's so much about this topic that as a layperson I just don't know. For instance, I don't know who's responsible for the tracks. So I often do things on the electric grid in the country, and what needs to do to, what we need to do by way of infrastructure investment in the grid. There's also lots of coordination. It's also uneven around the country. And I'm interested in that kind of question too, as you're sort of bringing on a new product, putting it on the rails. How good is that system? I should have asked this to Ian. Is it something that needs attention in terms of looking at that infrastructure across the United States, investment and consistency, if you will?
Our view is that this is not a barrier for us. Like, absolutely, more investment in that will benefit us. It's really, the most essential investment in infrastructure for us is charging infrastructure, just how we've set up this technology. But the benefits would be increasing the class of tracks so they're faster, right. Electrifying more switches. These are benefits that improve the asset efficiency for us.
Well, we set this up as a consulting opportunity with you for free, with Susan and with Rob. Rob, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur, an innovator who's created a new product that was going to be injected in the system, from your experience of new entrants that are coming in, driven by technology advancement and opportunity? What could get in the way that he could, proactively kind of begin work? What is your advice and counsel to him?
Move to Singapore.
I know you're serious. No, but if he's not going to move to Singapore,
I'm not serious. But I'm serious in the following sense: when you meet Singaporean government officials, number one, they're the smartest people you've ever met, and number two, they're laser focused on this. The entire government is focused on how do we boost innovation and productivity and make our country richer and a technology leader. Our leaders are not focused on that. They're focused on a variety of other things. But that's not the thing they're focused on. So my advice to you, and I mean, you know your business a million times more than I do and all, but what I've seen over the years is entrepreneurs who come up with great ideas, and then they why don't Washington understand this? Because A, Washington's got a million things on their plate. B, there's sort of a bias against newness. So I think that doing exactly what you're doing, being here, telling your story, getting in front of decision makers and explaining why what you're doing is going to be important for the country. That's so important. There's a few Silicon Valley VCs now that have increased their presence.
So he should meet some members of Congress and stuff.
Yeah, one maybe.
Bruce Westerman? We're setting you up, Bruce. Don't worry. Okay.
So I think, but I think the other challenge, I think, is there should be more sort of government relations rep in DC for startup-y kinds of companies, and that's growing. But, the bigger companies, they have the capacity to do this, as they should. But it's harder for the smaller, new startup-y companies to kind of tell their story. And then, oftentimes, the regulatory barriers are worse for them. So I see that, for example, in people who want to do 3D printed housing. How many counties, how many building codes? So it's just hard to deal with that stuff. So being here is step number one.
Just so Congressman Westerman knows, I'm going to talk to him in a minute. He's what Parallel is doing is they're creating autonomous battery electric rail vehicles, which they're putting on the system. He's in LA now. He's going to move. He's I think maybe interested in Arkansas. Who knows? But I think what's interesting, we've been sort of talking about modernization, in our systems and what we need to do it. And you're like a real talent. So Susan, what's your advice to Matt?
I'm not sure I have good advice too, but I think getting your message out and maybe trying some things like Waymo and Uber did. Just start small, and don't ask for permission.
Don't ask for permission.
I need the railroads to get permission.
Well, with that, we have the congressman that has arrived. Let's give a big round of applause to Susan Dudley from George Washington University, Matt Soule, who's the founder and CEO of Parallel, and Robert Atkinson, who's the founder and president of the Information Technology Innovation Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us and joining the Steve Clemons Show here this morning.